It's been so long since I've done a solo podcast episode that I'm not even really sure how to start this anymore. And I think this is mostly coming from I've done tons of content where short form, or I guess long form, but shorter style, 10 minutes, and it's just I work on the hook and all that. And I miss something about podcasting. I used to do long time ago, the first kind of content that I ever created was a really lame podcast I called Life in It with Raylen Davis. I have no idea why I came up with that name. Quite honestly, it's a little embarrassing, but I loved the chill vibe of doing a solo podcast, just sharing thoughts about some concepts. And so this is what I'm planning on turning the Elevated Entrepreneur into. Every single day, I've been making this habit where I write a piece of content every single day. And it's almost like a journal, if you will. And the thing about it is, and the reason I started doing this in the first place was because the grind of I have to get a piece of content every single day, and it has to be of value, and it has to do this, and it has to do that, it has to generate likes and growth and leads and all that. It became like lame to me. I didn't enjoy doing it anymore. And so I just stopped making content for almost 2 months. I didn't post anything on YouTube, didn't post anything on Instagram. And instead, I just hung out. I was bored. And then I found my creativity again. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But so what I thought about as I was doing this, I go, well, what if I just wrote every single day for me? And then I decided to just talk about it in a podcast every single week. At that point, I had 4 or 5 pieces of content and I could talk about it. So this is where we are today. And I thought we would start with some lessons that I learned in 2024. That was one of the first things that I wrote. And when I think back to 2024, the lessons learned and what I'm going to take with me in 2025, there's really 3 big things that stood out to me. And the first is, having the freedom to create is worth more to me than money. There are tons of things that have been pointing towards this for a while now. I talk about it often, but the agency that I created, again, was pretty successful in its own right very quickly. We were making really lots of money. I mean, for me anyway, it was, in 6 months, it was a $300,000 business. The problem was I just wasn't happy with it. And it kind of bothered me. Like, I was like, why is it that everything that I see online, everything that I kind of built up to was about monetizing the business, growing it. And I'm pretty good at enrolling people. Like, I should be more fulfilled. But in all actuality, I was miserable. Because I wasn't working on the things that I wanted to do. And so I still run that agency today. We're very selective with the clients we take on. But still, what do I like about what do I do? And I realized it was just having the freedom to create. I love creating offers for other people. I love creating content when I don't make it about the thing. I enjoy the process of creating sales script. I love creating. And so what I realized was I just need more time to create. I want a business that allows me to simply to create. And so the biggest lesson for me, and it was almost like something that I didn't even believe while it was happening, which was money is not that important to me. Yeah, sure, it's something that's needed, but it's not the end all be all for me. It's the idea of creating that does it for me. And it just so happens that I focus on that. Good things happen. Okay, so number 2 is solving problems that aren't solvable or in my control for that matter is a giant waste of time. Now, for most of you listening right now or watching this, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Raylen, that's a pretty obvious one. Okay, but just because something is obvious doesn't mean that you live by it. There's many things. I'm reading this book called Designing Your Life, which you can see right here. If you're watching over on YouTube, you can see this. So I found this book because I was reading Feel Good Productivity, and they reference it. And if you read books at all, you know the rabbit hole of books, right? You're reading a book. Next thing you know, they reference another book. You pick another book, whatever. Anyway, the point is they talk about the idea of when you're designing your life, not to try to solve for gravity. They talk about how, like, imagine a world where you're trying to make it uphill on a bike, but gravity's too strong. It's not allowing you to get up the hill all the way. And so you sit there and you try to solve for years gravity. How can I get rid of gravity so that way I can make it up this hill faster? And you'll spend your whole life and never be able to solve it. Or what you could do is make the bike a little bit lighter. You could lose a little bit of weight. You could work on your stamina. There's plenty of other things that you could do to still get to the same destination without having to solve for gravity. And so when I think back to some of the more hardship parts of my life in 2024, it all kind of stemmed from me trying to solve for gravity, me trying to change people, me trying to change the algorithm, right? There's so many other things that I was trying to change that just are not in my control when I could just focus on what I like to do and go from there. The third one is it's okay to not know what you want to be when you grow up at 34. Writing another piece of content, I was talking to my buddy Eddie Penyor the other day, and I just butchered his name. Eddie, I love you. I'm sorry. Penyor, whatever. Your World Within. You know who I'm talking about. Eddie, I love you. And so Your World Within is a YouTube channel, a good friend of mine and fellow creator here on YouTube. And the thing that I find most interesting, the people that I look up to the most didn't have it figured out for a while. And it's through wandering, through what the book called Designing Your Life calls prototyping. You build your way to the future you want. You don't just get born with it and automatically you know exactly what you want to do when you grow up. And there's a lot of me that feels like a failure because I haven't made it to where I think I should be at. And it was a while ago when a friend of mine, a mentor, was like, Raylen, I didn't make my first million until I was like 50. Like, what? Who said you have to have it all figured out at 34? And so it kind of gave me the room, if you will, to go, you know what? I'm going to experiment some more with the business. I'm going to create even more offers than I have created. I've created and sold tons of different things. But at the end of the day, I just haven't found the thing yet. And that's okay. I'm going to keep testing. I'm going to keep putting out stuff, keep giving value to other people, and I'm going to find the thing that I thoroughly enjoy. And so those are the three things that, like, again, I'm really taking with me going into 2024. And if you want to do the same for you, this is an exercise that I did that, again, the book Designing Your Life talks about, and so does Feel Good Productivity. But they talk about the Odyssey plan. And I kind of combined a few different exercises here. But essentially what I did was I took 3 different realities, and I simply asked myself the question, if this was how it was to be, would that be okay with me? And so the first thing that I did was I wrote out my current life. My current life, if I changed nothing at all, would that be okay? The next step is if I changed a few things. What if my life looked like this? And the third was like a really dramatic, you could call it unrealistic life. What would that look like? And something that I realized that the path that I was on, if I changed nothing about it, I wouldn't really enjoy it much. And I realized it's in my control. And it's something about taking a step back and looking at it from a bird's eye view, your life. It allows you to make better choices. And I realized the path that I was on wasn't that too exciting. The other thing that I think kind of shocked me was how much I was okay with letting go of some things. Like, so for example, right now, because of my life, because of the things I'm working on in my business, and also working with a company called Keep. Well, now it's going to be Thrive, got acquired by a company named Thrive. Because of what I'm doing there and my family, I haven't really had time to train jiu-jitsu in probably a year. And I thought that would impact me more. And I would go, man, I really, really miss it. But I realized something. And again, I had a mentor, my jiu-jitsu coach once said to me, you know, jiu-jitsu is always going to be here. And so I was okay with sacrificing that for some of the other things I had on that list, including, again, spending more time with family, more trips, working more on the business, things like that. So I was kind of honestly shocked with some of the things I wrote on there that I was okay with letting go of. And what it did was it now freed me up. Now I don't worry so much or complain or or I guess miss the other parts of it, because I know I'll get back to it in another season, just not today. And I mentioned earlier this idea of losing my creativity. So the first thing that I wrote when I kind of got back in the swing of things was actually in Flagstaff. I had been, again, not interested in writing content, not interested in making content, doing anything. And just because my wife, we have a 1-year-old daughter, and it's not hard. It's just parenting, right? Like, we haven't spent a lot of time together. She's a stay-at-home mom, so she's been crazy busy with the kids and, working on the house and just sacrificing her whole body and mind and everything for taking care of all of us. And so I said, you know what, like, let's get out of town, go to Flagstaff. There's a place called High Country Motor Lodge, which her and I went to a couple of years ago, and we absolutely loved it. And so I said, surprise, babe, we're going to go. Now, granted, she's not the type that loves surprises. She fought it the whole way until we dropped off our daughter, dropped off the son, and we got in the car, and she was happy. But just the initial, she doesn't like surprises. But when we went there, it was wonderful, right? We did nothing. We just read, she crocheted, we hung out. But something weird happened. Because I wasn't trying to create, I all of a sudden had endless ideas for content, a new course I'm working on. My creativity just found me again. And I didn't intend to write anything, but what happened was I started thinking about these videos, the podcast, and things that I could write. And so I realized that, funny enough, in order to get out of a creative rut, you have to kind of stop trying. I wasn't trying, everyone says, when motivation doesn't hit you or inspiration doesn't hit you, you have to sit down and make yourself write. And I think that is probably true to some degree, but I also think boredom plays a very important role here. I was purposely bored in Flagstaff, doing nothing. I had nothing to be productive with. I wasn't working. I wasn't doing anything. I was just chilling. And I think that really helped me kind of get my creativity back. Now, with that being said, I can't go to Flagstaff every week. Like, how am I going to do this? And so kind of what I decided to do was having this morning routine. And I know people don't really love the idea of a morning routine, neither do I. But it's just waking up to nothing. I read for 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops in the mornings. And then I just write, like, whatever comes to my mind. There's no agenda to it. And one thing I kind of do to trick myself is I go, hey, this is not a piece of content. This is just a journal, if you will. Like, you're not doing anything with this. No one's going to see this. Doesn't matter. And it just allows me to be creative and handle a piece of content. And again, I think right before this, I kind of realized something was off, simply because I was talking to a group of consultants. I got asked to come speak to a group of consultants, and the topic was around, everything. Brand strategy. It was a fun experiment. It was around brand strategy, creating a lead magnet, the customer journey, enrolling, and brand strategy. Just everything you need to grow a consulting business, I talked about. But the time limit was 15 minutes. Now, granted, I took longer. Just so you know, if you ever ask me to come do a workshop for your company or whatever, just know that, like, whatever time you give me, I am going to go over. It's just an inevitability. I can't help it. Especially if somebody asks a question, I'm going to go off on a rant. It just happens. So anyway, this 15 minutes turned into more like 30. But I crammed all this stuff into a 15-minute segment. And somebody asked a really interesting question. And she asked essentially, like, what's the secret to creating content consistently? And what I said was, like, know going in that you're going to suck. I think what people do, and I've done the same thing, you watch your favorite content creators and you go, man, I want my stuff to look like that. And then when you create it, it doesn't look anything like it. Like I mentioned my buddy Eddie a second ago, I watch his stuff. And even when I was planning on creating this podcast, I was sitting here with my content that I wrote, and I watched one of his videos, and I go, maybe I should do something like this. And then it just kind of like started to weigh on me. And I'm like, I will never be as good as Eddie. I will never be as good as name your favorite content creator. So I'm just going to hit the record button and start talking. And so know going in that your content's going to suck. And the most important thing is to stop creating for a result. And it's difficult, especially if you're a business owner. You're like, I'm creating content to build a personal brand so I can sell more of my products, my offerings, my whatever. And there's a reason to this. It needs to generate leads. But when you create for a result like that, in my experience, you fall out of love with content creating. And so what I kind of realized was like, it's more about falling in love with the process of creating than anything else. Same thing with like working out, for example. If you're constantly working out to get gains and to get stronger and all this, like eventually you may burn out from that. Some people love that aspect, but I've been, on and off. When I say off, I mean like taking a couple of weeks off. I've been working out basically my whole life since I was like 12 years old, maybe 11. But it's just because I started falling in love with the process of going to the gym, getting away, all this. So anyway, what I said again was just go into it knowing that you're going to suck at creating content and just fall in love with the process of doing it as a way of expressing yourself. And as soon as I said that, I realized I wasn't taking my own advice. Like I fell out of love with the process of creating. I was creating for a result. I have to create in order to do X, Y, and Z. And if that didn't happen, then I didn't want to create content. That's the reason why I burnt out from creating content in the first place. And so at that moment that I knew, all right, I need to get back into this habit of creating content that I want to create because I want to create it, and then just letting the results kind of happen. Stop trying to force it, if you will. And again, a couple weeks later, a week later, we went up to Flagstaff, and that's what kind of broke through. And again, similar kind of to this conversation, it kind of came up around the idea of selling. So I've sold many things in my life. So for those that don't know, I came up in my career in higher education where it's called an admissions rep. Essentially, it's a salesperson. So I sold careers to people looking, sometimes second careers, first careers, whatever, to potential students in trade schools, massage therapy, skincare, you name it. And then sold in a med spa setting. I was a business development manager for a med spa, selling that. Software services, implementation services for software companies, done that. Obviously, my coaching, I've sold courses, agency, you name it. Within this realm, I've probably sold it, or at least advised someone how to sell it. And the funny thing is, I hate sales. Maybe it's just because I just don't love the fill in the blank sales guru here. But the advice to always be closing, ABC, coffees for close, I just don't like that vibe. Never was for me. The thing that helped me was, and this comes from my higher education experience, was the idea of enrolling. So when you enroll somebody, it's not a transaction, it's a transformation, right? I want this outcome. I want to go somewhere. I want to be someone different, and I need a vehicle to help me get there. My job, when we're talking about enrolling, is enrolling you in the idea that what you want is worthy. It's okay to want what you want, and we just need to become the person who obtains that. And it just so happens that I have a product, an offer, an agency, a school, whatever you name, to help you get there. It becomes secondary. The transaction, the signing of the contract is like just a formality at this point. It's just something we got to do to get you to where you want to be. But for the most part, my mindset's around how can I enroll you? And I still say this, I don't really care so much about the sale. So for example, like for me, it's you could watch this video or listen to the podcast and never buy from me. But the fact that you're enrolled, right, or subscribed or whatever, it's enough for me. I'm enrolling you in this idea. And it just so happens that having this mindset has led to millions of dollars of sales for the companies I've worked for or for myself, right? If we combine it all. And so if you find yourself in a position like I have been, where, man, selling is a vital part of my job, of my business and all this, I need to be able to do it, and you hate selling, Stop trying to force yourself to sell. You're never going to be good at it. Instead, maybe try this mind shift. This mind shift where you stop focusing on how do you sell someone, how do you close them, how do I follow this script so they say yes, and instead focus more on what you need to do to enroll them into their idea and helping them get what they want. And it may not be with you. And I think that's the really the key here is that there are some times I talk to people and I genuinely convince them not to buy from me simply because of the fact that I'm not a good fit, but I still want them to have what they ultimately want. And that's kind of the key. So one of the things that I'm hoping to achieve here while doing this is to help people figure out, I guess, this one more aspect to this. And it kind of ties into the content creation, it ties into the money aspect of it. But it's simply to figure out what you would do for free. What would you do for free? People go backwards when they're creating businesses. And I think we've all done it. You start with, hey, I want financial freedom, let's say. I want to be able to create a business that makes me tons of money so I can do certain things. And it's a smart play. There's a lot of people that do this, right? You can argue the people that want to build businesses and sell them, that's their MO. How can I do something that makes enough money to where I can sell it one day? And then they create an amazing offer that they know solves a problem for people that they could sell one day, and they make content around it and do all this, and then they wake up one day and they realize they don't love doing what they're doing. I've been in the game long enough, and just for my own sanity, I can't really build this way. That's not really the thing for me. Ultimately, what has worked for me and is working for me today is I start with the life that I want, focus more on what would I want to do for free? What would get me out of bed? What would I enjoy the most? And then ultimately I find a price tag to it. Simply because there's going to be days where you don't want to do the thing you get paid to do. I've been there, right? Like there's parts of running an agency that I absolutely don't like. And absolutely you can just hire someone that loves that thing. It's how you 10x yourself, right? It's called, there's a great book called 10x easier than 2x. And they talk about this. And you can easily just find somebody. That's one way. But then you have this problem where what if you don't want to manage people and you have a whole team to manage and it sucks? It's not great either. So I think probably the better route is you start with what would you do for free? What is the thing that you could talk about ad nauseum? What's the thing that you love discussing with people? And then if literally they would walk up to you and ask you a question, you do it for free. I think about my a friend named Evan Carmichael. He's here on YouTube. And if you walk up to him, you don't need to pay him. But if he's at an event and you ask him about YouTube, he will sit down with you for an hour and talk to you about YouTube. He's done it with me. I've watched him do it with countless people. He absolutely loves YouTube. He lives and breathes it. He loves YouTube strategy. He loves helping people figure out how to make money from YouTube, not from AdSense alone, but for their actual business. That's what he enjoys more than anything. There's a reason why he can go to events and talk to people for hours and still have energy. He loves doing it. It just so happens that he also makes a boatload of cash. Boatload of cash is the thing of what I'm trying to say. I just combined the two, doing it. So he gives away the strategy for free and people still buy from him, right? This is the beauty of creating a business that starting with the idea of what would you do honestly for free. And in Evan's example, he did it for free for a long time. He created content on YouTube for, I can't remember how many years. He has this like famous chart. I think it's on he's on his website of the subscriber count over the years and how long he was kind of stuck at a certain amount. And then he blew up from there, mainly because he was doing it for free. He loved it that much. So when you're thinking about, okay, how can I create a business that, yes, of course, makes money. And it is important. I don't want to sit here and tell you it's not, because it is. You don't have a business if you're not making money. You have a hobby. But I think starting from the perspective of what would I do for free will get you to a better place. All right. For that being said, that's it for this episode. That's just a couple thoughts that I had over the week. Looking forward to the next one. I enjoy doing this a little bit more than my normal content. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments below. Should we kind of keep this podcast style going or go back to the old way? With that being said, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, do all that fun stuff. It'll help me over on YouTube if you're listening to this in your car. Hopefully not with your kids, because I'm not going to lie, I'll probably in other episodes will swear way more than I did today. But thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Tell a friend, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.